Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode 102, and I am back. I'm back home after my weekend down in Shizuoka. I'm back in Kanagawa now, and hell of a week. Now, let me first start by saying at the start of this week, Monday, in the afternoon, it started raining. Now, you think, all right, you think nothing of it. You think nothing at rain. And then we were hit by tropical storm Mawar. 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 I'm going with Mawar. I'm not going to say it again. So we were hit by this tropical storm. Now, it battered Guam. And then it started coming up for us. So it moved its way up through Okinawa and it hit Kyushu, and then it come on to Honshu. Now, Honshu is the big island in the middle of Japan between Hokkaido and Kyushu. And then it moved really slowly up the country. So from Monday afternoon until Saturday lunchtime, I shit you not, it was like somebody were throwing buckets and buckets of water, full buckets of water at you. Not just a bit of drizzle, not just a bit of a rainstorm, buckets of water. So on Tuesday morning, because I'm always up early, I'm up and at it at 5 o'clock in the morning. But on Tuesday morning, I'm in bed, and where our bedroom is, our bedroom's in the corner of the house, so we've got two windows in the house. And one of them windows, it sounded as if the fire brigade had an hosepipe at window. The wind were blowing against the house, and it were raining, and it were a cloudburst, but this cloudburst just went on for about half an hour, just battering at window. And this was like 4 o'clock, just as it were getting light. So I got up and I went downstairs, and because the temperature had picked up so much outside, all the house were full of condensation. Or is it the opposite way? If it's hotter inside. So the temperature had dropped so much outside that the heat that had been in the house from the sunny day on Sunday, on Monday, had not had a chance to warm up. So all the windows were all full of condensation. And I could not open a window in the living room, because even if I'd have just cracked a window, it would have flooded the living room. So I'm thinking, well, that's going to have to slow down by the time I leave for work. It didn't. It didn't slow down at all. So I went out in it because I cycle to work. Because, like I've said before, in Japan, they pay for your travel, they pay for your train ticket to work. So if I cycle to work per year, I'm making £1,000 sterling, which is what, about $750 a year if I go to work on my bike. So that's what I do. So I've got to pack towels. I've got waterproofs, cycle to work, and cycling to work, it's a double-edged sword. There's nobody on paths, so you can cycle on paths. You don't have to cycle on road, because the roads are more packed, because there's fellas that won't cycle to train, so they make the wives bring them to the train station. So there's less traffic, but the wind were in your face. Now, for a day, that's fine. But you get to work, you dry yourself off, you're trying to dry your clothes during the day, and then you've got to get back on your bike to cycle home, and it's still raining. Now, this front, if you looked on it on the satellite map, to the north of where I was, about 100 miles, bright sunshine, no problem. About 40 miles south, no problem. But just where we were, it was all yellow and red, which means the heaviest of rain. And that went on for 5 days. So between Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning, I was getting wet twice a day. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for I don't know how long, 102 episodes, if you're a real fan, you will know one of the main reasons I left the UK was the weather. The weather is depressing. So the main reason I left England is because of the weather. From being a kid, you wake up in the morning, you're already pissed off that you've got to go to school. But if you open those curtains, you've no idea what the weather's going to be like. You open those curtains in the morning, I've lost count of opening them curtains, looking at a grey sky and seeing drizzle and going, ugh. And when I got into adult life, I thought, I don't want that anymore. So I fucked off and I left. And I only went to countries that had decent weather. And I lived there. Thailand, Australia, Spain, Japan. And I've been in Japan the longest. I've been here over 15 years now. And it has got 4 seasons, so it does get cold here. You have got a winter. But your autumns and your springs are milder. And I mean, you've got a rainy season, and you can start the clock by it, middle of June to middle of July, but it started early this year. They keep starting earlier and earlier this year as the years go by. So you're getting these changes in seasons a lot earlier. Excuse me. So getting wet annoys me. But today, I would say Saturday, just after lunch, about 1:30, 2 o'clock, it cleared. It just cleared. Blue sky, a little bit of eye cloud, but blue sky. I've got my window here in studio, and I've got frosted glass, but I can just see blue sky. I can just see blue sky there, and even although I'm locked in a room 2 meters by 2 meters, and I've only got a frosted glass window, I'm a lot happier than I have been this week. Much happier than I have been this week, just because the weather's got better. And I don't know how long it's going to last because rainy season started now. So hopefully we don't get a full week of that torrential rain. Now, on Tuesday morning, which was last day of spring around the world, which was May the 31st, obviously I'm up, I've done my exercise, and the lad comes down and switches telly on. And you're thinking, it's pissing it down. I'm going to get wet. I'm going to get really wet today. At least no else is going to be as bad as that. There's a J alert. They're called J alerts. Japan alerts is the name of them. And there were a Japan alert. And when you get one of these Japan alerts, it didn't come through on phone, but as soon as you switch the TV on and you go 1, 2, go through all the 12 terrestrial channels in Japan, it would just show its same story. And if you have got a map of the Korean peninsula on them J alerts, if you don't understand them, if you've got the Korean peninsula, it means that the old fat man in North Korea has sent something up in sky, a missile. And usually he likes to fire them over Japan. So everybody's got to go and take cover. But we didn't get the phone alert like you do, because you get a phone alert for the earthquakes, you get a phone alert for the tsunami warnings. and landslides and shit like that, you get an alert. And these missile is no exceptions. But we weren't getting the Japan alerts through on his phone. So telly goes on about 7 o'clock when kid comes downstairs. He's wanting to watch his cartoons, watch the anime before he goes to school, and it was just all this Japan alert. Now we thought he'd fired a missile. So what happens is, if you look at the Korean Peninsula, you've got Japan to the right, you've got the Sea of Japan, Japan, and then over you've got the Pacific. And then to the left of the Korean Peninsula, you've got this big bay and China. You've got China. Now, whatever, we didn't know what had shot up in air, but as soon as the launch had set off, everybody gets alerted in Japan. And it failed. It failed, and it had come down in this bay. And I forget what the name of the bay is. But it's huge. And it had come down there in between North Korea and China. So he'd fired it the other way. You're thinking, what the fuck is he doing that for? Because you don't poke the bear. You can't be making China angry, because they're one of the only friends that North Korea have got round here, round these parts. So it had come down in that bay. So we're all wondering what it is, because missiles always come over Japan. So you're thinking, what the fuck? I'm going to work. I'm getting pissed. I'm going to get piss wet through for the second day running, twice in a day, and this fat fuck is firing missiles from North Korea. Anyway, as the morning went on, these warnings just went on and on and on and on all through the day, and then it turns out that the news story that you got at night is trying to send a spy satellite up to spy on Americans, and as it's gone up, it's failed and it's come down between North Korea and China, and he's lost his spy satellite. Now, what this has got me thinking is the amount of missiles that fella sends up, a couple of years, and he flies them over Japan. So they go over Japan and they drop down in Pacific. Now, every time he does it, he gets a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer to America. So it's got America shit in the pants. Now, they never seem to fail. Those missiles never seem to fail. If one of them has a malfunction and comes down in Japan, the Americans are going to fucking flatten that country. They'll flatten it. And they might get a few nuclear warheads off before they do, but the Americans will just end that country. But they don't seem to be failing when they're coming up over us. Now, this spy satellite that they sent up, I think it got so far and it just blew up and fell back to Earth. So I'm reckoning on that the Americans have hacked that. They've hacked it and brought down that spy satellite. Now, why don't the Chinese say to North Korea, hey, fucking rein it in, motherfucker? But the Chinese don't do that because they know that North Korea is a bit of a thorn in America's side. So China allows North Korea to get away with murder, and they do. He's sending up missiles, and all that happens is South Korea has a go, Japan will have a go, and then America will come in and say, stop fucking doing that. And it's always when the Americans are having their tactical maneuvers in the Sea of Japan or in the Pacific around the Korean Peninsula, around South Korea and up in international waters. That's when North Korea will send one of these up just as a warning. But even after meeting with Trump and walking out on that meeting, there were a few tests then. Yeah, so you have to deal with that. Now, his spy satellite blew up, fell to Earth, he's lost it, and then his thin, gaunt sister. I mean, the fucking country's starving. The North Korean people ain't got enough food, and it doesn't even look like he's feeding his sister. Doesn't even look like he's feeding her. I mean, he's as fat as you like. He's probably the fattest person in North Korea. He's the leader, but you'd think his sister would be well fed, but she don't look well. But she kicked off. She kicked off saying that they're gonna send another one. They've got another one ready to send up. Yeah, right. Of course you have. Can't even get a decent meal down you. So they reckon they're going to launch another one. Now, going out on a limb here, I think if they have got another one ready to go up, which I don't think they have, but it does go up, I think that'll fail again. I think the Americans have hacked them. And I don't think the Americans would hack the missiles and bring the missiles down, because if he gets closer and closer to America, that just gives America the reason. All they need is a fucking reason. And then they'll go in. But I think with the spy satellites, if North Korea have got a chance to start spying on America, I don't think they're going to stand for that. So I think any satellite that North Korea sends up will be brought down very quickly. Very quickly. So that's the two things I've been dealing with this week is the rain, which annoyed me. And I mean, it's sunny now, so it's forgotten about. And the missiles, or what we thought were a missile, which turned out to be a satellite. Now, the third thing last night. Now, being an expat and living, I mean, I've been an expat 2 hours away from England. I've been an expat 24 hours away from England. When you live this far away, one of the only things that's a bit annoying is you've got to stay up till daft o'clock if you want to watch any decent football that's going on in Europe or going on in England. So, I mean, because I'm getting up so early, I go to bed early. I go to bed at 9, but I'm up at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. So staying up till 11 is way past my bedtime. And I stayed up last night and I watched the Manchester derby, the first time the two Manchester clubs have met each other in an FA Cup final. And I stayed up and watched it. Finished 2-1 to Manchester City. Gundogan scored 2. He scored the fastest goal in FA Cup final history after 30 seconds, and it were a belter. Volley, top bins. Left De Gea just standing there. I remember when I think I didn't see the Saha one with for Everton, but the Di Matteo for Chelsea. I remember watching that. That were a fast one. But yeah, Manchester City won. Now, I'm not going to name drop. I'm not going to name drop at all. But a friend of mine is working with. How can I put this? Is working with Manchester City's most famous fan. Yes, she's working with him. Now, Manchester City's most famous fan is not in England at the moment. is off out in the world working. Now, Manchester City have won the Premier League. Last night they won the FA Cup. And next week they're playing the Champions League final against Inter Milan, and they have a chance of winning the Champions League. Now, if they win the Champions League next week, it will be their most successful season that Manchester City has ever had. The triple in England has only been done once, and it was done by Manchester United in 1999. They won the Premier League, they beat Newcastle in final. Manchester United beat Bayern in Champions League final, and that got them the triple. So last night's game were more of Manchester United wanting to stop Manchester City doing that rather than winning the FA Cup. So Gundogan scored, and then Grealish did this nothing foul, and then Bruno Fernandes got a penalty, and then second half came and Gundogan scored again, 51st minute, and then they lifted the FA Cup 2-1 Manchester City. That's 2 of the 3 that they've got. Now, Manchester City's most famous fan is up and down all over America this week, the next month, all over America on a tour. So he is missing out on Manchester City's greatest ever. Now, I was speaking to somebody who was working on the tour with him, and I was saying, how are you getting on? What the hell are you doing over there when Manchester City are going to have the greatest week of their lives? What you do? And pissed off beyond belief, because what happened was all this tour were all booked, and if you remember, Qatar World Cup were played in December, so everything was sort of moved forward so they could get this in, because the Champions League final should be done and dusted by now. Everything should be done and dusted by May. The FA Cup, the Premier League, and the Champions League should be done by the latest the third week in May, and we're coming into the second week in June next week. And Saturday night here is when it's getting played. So he's missing out on it all. But she was saying to me that they will be in San Diego watching it. Now, for me, the kickoff time were 11 o'clock here, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning there where they were yesterday. So I don't know. Being there, I think, would be the best thing. Watching it in England, in Manchester, would be a second. But yeah, when you're out there in the world, at the other end of the world, and you've got to get up at these daft times for World Cup, for FA Cup, to watch your team fucking lose to Carlisle in League Two semi-finals, to Carlisle, fucking Carlisle. To have to do that and watch your team lose at 4 o'clock in the morning, it makes it worse. But I suppose if they win, you don't really give a shit. But yeah, watching your shit team lose to another shit team at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's not, it's not the nicest. But I will say, expats leave for a reason. They leave for a reason. And the reason is, it's got to be fucking better than this place. It's got to be better than this place. And that's why I left. So if the odd rainy season where it's pissing it down torrentially for a week, if there's a fat man in Korea firing missiles over your country that might blow up and land on you, and if you have to get up early doors to watch a football game, that is worth it. Completely worth it. Because the other option is living in Bradford. See you soon.